The Cincinnati Bengals obviously have a lot of work to do this offseason, and that work typically starts with your own guys, your internal free agents. Let's prioritize that list for the Bengals in 2026.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. He's James Rapien. I'm Jake Lisco. We've been Locked On Bengals since 2016 here. And it's your best one-stop shop. I'm trying to do too many things in my brain at one time for all things Bengals. We welcome back all the everydayers out there, everyone who makes Locked On Bengals their first listen. And today we dive into the beginning of a series of offseason conversations that we've been teasing and now finally crack open the can on a variety of topics. And free agency for most teams starts with, okay, what do we have? Who are the guys that we're most familiar with, who have been in the system, been in the building, and what direction do we want to go with our own guys? Those are the decisions that, for the most part, happen in the days before free agency. The decisions are discussed and then executed as free agency opens, typically after the combine. I know a lot of people have asked James about Dalton Risner, for example. Are the Bengals working on an extension with Dalton Risner? Typically, those contracts don't happen until closer to the combine, usually after the combine. But the Bengals have a number of internal free agents beyond Dalton Risner, although I would say he is the top question that we've been asked so far in this young offseason. A lot of guys here that the Bengals have decisions to make after watching them play in this system for either the last year or many years for some of these guys.
Yeah, a lot of decisions, some big decisions. There's going to be some new faces, some big names that likely end up elsewhere. But you're right about Dalton. Like, I think you and I both disagree. I don't want to speak for you, but like, there's going to be a theme. Get Dalton done and the offense is set. And it's like, well, you always want to get better on offense. There's things you can do. But do you really want to disrupt what that offensive line had flowing? I mean, I'm not sure I've seen. You have Orlando Brown Jr., Ted Karras, Amarius Mims all saying you better bring Dalton back. I'm sure Dylan feels the same way. I just didn't ask Dylan. Dylan didn't happen to be there during these final minutes of the 2025 season post-game or during locker cleanout where he was, I did see him, but where I was able to ask him. And I'm sure he would want Dalton back as well. Has there ever been, I mean, I guess Joe Flacco, if you want to do that, but someone so unanimously like, you got to bring him back, especially in a spot that has caused the Bengals issues. So yeah, I get why fans are asking about it now. I also understand your point because the league, I don't want to say stops, but this is the evaluation period. I think Dalton and his people are probably seeing where his market is. And on the other side, the Bengals are doing what every NFL team is doing right now and evaluating. You still legally can get something done now. I would love it. I agree with you. I think it'll probably be around the combine, I would say at the earliest that something gets done, and most likely a little later than that.
Typically, it's the days right before free agency opens that the Bengals,
like Gesicki last year.
Yeah, that's when the Bengals and most teams in the NFL tend to get deals done with their internal guys. You can go look at transaction logs for like January and February. There's a handful. There will be some deals. There will be some veterans that get deals this month, next month, but it won't be a long list. And the Bengals, I think I went back like 10 years through their transaction logs and couldn't find a single like significant veteran move, like maybe some very small deal, an exclusive rights free agent or restricted free, that kind of thing where they're just like, we're going to get this done ahead of time. For an unrestricted free agent, especially like Risner, who's going to be figuring out his market and is somewhat incentivized to hit free agency after the way he finished the season to see if he can actually get a deal from a team, especially if the Bengals don't show up. And that's why it's so important for the Bengals to show up and treat this with a priority. Dalton Risner has not really cashed in that way in his career and might see this as his best opportunity to do so. But to your point, why would you want to disrupt that? And the reason that we're starting with Risner, and I'm sure we'll have a bigger conversation about all these guys. When he entered the starting lineup for the Cincinnati Bengals, re-entered the starting lineup in week 12 against the New England Patriots, the Bengals then rattled off like 7 straight of their best blocking performances of the season. And Dalton Risner was a big part of that in a lot of games, to the point where, we're talking about Risner as a run blocker, which when they signed Risner was like, well, he's not going to give you anything as a run blocker. And then he had some awesome run blocking grades.
It's the opposite. Yeah.
Like he was also good as a pass blocker for sure. And that
Yeah.
thing, if he can do those things and it's working with Scott Peterson, the techniques they're teaching, and our film analyst, Bengals fans, Mike Santagata, wrote a great piece on the way Scott Peters is implementing wide zone in Cincinnati a little bit differently than is traditional. But like, if that stuff is working, yeah, why would you want to introduce an element of chaos into that when, you don't know exactly how guys are going to be year over year, but at worst, Dalton Risner looks like a guy that should be plug and play. Your offensive line is now set. Maybe you want to bring in some competition. Great. You get an awesome tackle prospect or awesome interior line prospect in the second
Sure.
round, pull the trigger. It's not stopping you. But if you can get those guys where you feel like you don't need suddenly to replace a position desperately, and Dalton Risner sure does that, you're in a good spot.
Amarius Mims called him the best right guard in the league, right? And say whatever. I'm not here to say, oh, he's the best right guard in the league. But if you have that belief, like, when I was sold on Joe Flacco that it was going to work, when Ted Karras said that's a Hall of Famer, and it was the day Flacco got in the building, like, that's Hall of Famer Joe Flacco. And it's like, oh, well, these guys just believe in him. And that element of it, especially when you're in the thick of it, like, that matters a ton. I also want to point out the fact that these guys are pointing all this out and saying all these things and praising Dalton. He got benched this year. He got benched 2 games in. I think in a way blamed himself for the Joe Burrow injury. Comes back, plays a little bit better when he's back. And Dylan Fairchild takes over when he's healthy again. And we were like, all right, well, is Dalton going to get reps and going to get run? And he did on the right side, and boom, he took off. So, like, you've seen him in adverse situations. You've seen him when it got – I can't imagine signing Jake. And a big reason why you sign and you take the deal you take is because Joe Burrow's in town and you have a shot at a Super Bowl, all of those things. And 2 weeks later, Joe's hurt, could be out for the season. You're benched, and it just feels awful. Like, so to respond that way, it's just good to know, like, when you evaluate these free agents, you never know how they're going to necessarily respond in those type of situations. You know how Dalton's going to respond because you've seen it firsthand. I do think that's an advantage, like knowing how they handle things, how they respond, how flexible he was going from left guard to right guard, and really doing whatever was asked of him and keeping a good attitude. I didn't hear any bickering or any complaining from Dalton Risner. And considering 3 weeks after signing, he was benched for Jalen Rivers. He could have whined and bickered and asked out and done all those things, and he didn't. And he didn't do those things behind the scenes either. He kept a good attitude, kept working, and it paid off, and it should pay off with a new contract.
Who do you think had more fun in the last several weeks of the season, last half of the season? Mike Pennell or Dalton Risner? Speaking of asking out.
Dalton Risner. No
Dalton
doubt.
Risner, for the PFF fans out there, over
point.
the last 7 weeks of the season, Dalton Risner was the 13th ranked guard in the NFL, coming in ahead of Quentin Nelson, Damian Lewis, Tevin Jenkins, Tate Ratledge, or some of the others on the list.
Ooh.
Tyler Booker, who some people think is really good. Gray Zabel down on this list. So he was really good, is the point we're trying to make here down the stretch. In the same realm as Sam Cosmi and Dominic Pooney and Isaac Sayamalu, some of those guys on playoff teams, obviously. But that's a lot of conversation about Dalton Risner as we get started here, James. And there are a number of other free agents to talk about. Some of these are going to be entire shows on other days, or at least segments on other days that we're not going to dive into as much today. It's like Trey Hendrickson, that decision. We're going to talk about it today, but there's a bigger conversation than perhaps will fit into this episode. So let's keep talking about the Bengals' internal free agent priorities here coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings, managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to take the stress out of everything from payroll to benefits and HR so you can focus on running your business, supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, whether you're onboarding, whether you're paying employees, obviously it's tax time. So Gusto is going to take care of all of that. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind with Gusto. I've used Gusto, continue to use Gusto. You can too by trying Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. That's gusto.com/lockedonnfl for 3 months free. 3 months free payroll right now with Gusto. Gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, Jake. Gusto.com/lockedonnfl.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/lockedonnfl. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/lockedonnfl. That is ethos.com/lockedonnfl. Ethos.com/lockedonnfl. Application times and rates may vary.
James, we have one more point on Dalton Risner that I want to get to before we talk about some of the rest of the Bengals internal free agents this year. And that is, I just want to get your feel. What are the chances right now? How would you characterize the odds that Dalton Risner is back? Somebody told me, and I haven't heard this myself, so apologies that I am speaking a little bit out of pocket here, that Risner did an interview, I think it was Bengals Booth podcast, where he called it a 50-50 chance, but has been very outspoken about his desire to return, obviously, in addition to his teammates' desire for him to return.
Yeah, I think he just said 50-50 because he doesn't know. He doesn't have any knowledge. The good news is
that happens or it doesn't.
That's right. Because he did say that on Bengals Booth with Dan Horde. And I didn't take that as, he just doesn't know if they're interested or not. And it's I think that's all he was saying. I do think they're interested. I believe they want Dalton Risner back. And that's the element here that Dalton might not know. Well, it's my job to know. And I think there's definitely mutual interest. And whether or not it gets done, a whole nother thing. But I would be surprised as of now if it didn't get done. And you leave like 20% for him to hit the market and then someone just to throw a bunch of money at him, or 20% for the Bengals to overthink the guard spot because history says they might. But I would say like 80%, because Joe Burrow said it's the best offensive line he's ever had. I know Zach Taylor believes in Dalton. Obviously, we've heard the offensive line talk about him. He wants to be here. And so as long as they offer him a reasonable deal, why would he not seriously consider it and them, the two sides, not be able to find common ground? I just think it's going to more than likely happen. I would put it at 80%.
I wonder what kind of contract it would take for him to just be like, yeah, okay, I don't need to go test free agency, because he this year made pretty close to the league minimum, 13 or 1.3 million ish, which is less than the Bengals paid Lucas Patrick, who got $2.1 million from the Bengals to back up the interior of the offensive line, it turned out. And it's less than Cody Ford by a pretty big margin, especially when you look at Cody Ford's number for 2026. And that'll be a topic on another day when we look at cap casualties and the lack thereof. Not very many candidates for cap casualties for the Bengals in 2026.
What do you think? What do you think money wise?
Well, that's what I was talking about. Like,
I know. Like,
so Dalton is going to be. I wanted to look at his age because I don't remember.
31. Will be 31.
Yeah, so 31 means that he is younger than the Kevin Zeitlers of the world and not as good. So Zeitler got $9 million from the Titans last year. So the combination of being younger and not as good would put me in that ballpark. Isaiah Muller from the Steelers, and this is a while ago now, got $8 million, and it's coming off of that $8 million deal. He signed around age 30 with the Steelers. I think it was a 3-year deal. So a little bit of inflation there. So yeah, somewhere around 10, 2 years, 10 million would probably be where the Bengals would start. And Dalton Risner might come back and ask for a 3rd year and some sort of assurances that he would see that 3rd year.
Yeah. And that's where it gets scary, man.
Yep.
I'll be honest.
I'm not saying guarantees in year 3. I'm saying like a structure of the contract that is such that the Bengals are better off keeping him for that 3rd year unless he's a disaster than releasing him.
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm just saying, the Bengals.
Oh, yeah, guarantees are going to be an issue again.
Well, that's where it gets scary too. But like 2 for 10, $5 million per, a chance at a home. Like at putting some roots.
Oh, you're
down,
talking
like,
$5 million per year?
I talked to someone. Yeah, I talked to someone that thought that was too high.
So the $5 million per year range is like fringe starter money. Maybe that's still the NFL season. I think if the Bengals offer him a two-year, $5 million per year contract, he will test free agency. And maybe he ends up coming back. That number intuitively feels too low to me, the way he finished the season. Now, it was only 7 games, so there's that argument that he didn't get through the whole season. But it wouldn't surprise me if he tries to parlay that into some needy team going out and paying. But the other thing is, this year there are more starter level guards than normal, I would say, on the free agent market. Like, that is a relatively deep market compared to recent years, I would say, this year.
Yeah. So
at least right now,
we'll see. We'll see. I wonder what you're saying. They will not offer him $10 million per year.
No way.
So,
but just looking at, like, thinking about inflation, right? And thinking about like where some guys have been lately, looking at the Kevin Zeitler deal, like $8 million a year, maybe between 7 and $8 million a year. I mean, over the cap, for example, and these aren't perfect predictors or anything, but their valuation on Dalton Risner is $7.6 million based on this year. And in some of the games he played, like, he was playing like a high level starter. It's just he didn't do it for the whole year. If he did high level starter for the whole year, we're probably having a much different conversation.
Sure. And that's part of it. And we'll see. I see, but that's why I left that 20%, because I think that both sides want it to happen. But maybe because of the way he played down the stretch, he pushes it and goes out there, but he doesn't want to be on the market. Like, I think he wants to be home. And so it's tough. It's why he put it at 50-50, put it that way.
I think that it will very much depend on, because these guys, there's tampering, NFL tampers, shocker. Like, his agent's going to, this is why it takes to the combine typically too. His agent will be at the combine, and his agent will be talking to teams and getting an idea of what Dalton's market is. And that's typically where the deals either get done with the team that the player is an unrestricted free agent for, or the player decides, I'm going to actually go test free agency, because I think that there's a market out there based on my agent's conversations. My agent, like, that's the job of the agent, right? Is to provide that advice as to, like, yeah, we can take the deal that you have on the table, or no, we can get significantly more money if we go to the open market. And that's why these things typically take until after the combine to get done.
Yeah, they do. And it just made me nervous. The gap between, and I don't want to say who the conversation was with. There's someone that knows things, but not with the Bengals organization, just speculating. But I don't know if he would want me to say or not. But like, the gap between that conversation where he was like, really? You'd offer in that versus what you just did initially. Oh, you mean per year? Oh,
I mean, there's obviously a lot of room in the middle there, and that's probably where it is.
Probably, you're probably right. There we go. Probably right. All right. 2 segments on Dalton Risner. I didn't have this being the Risner show, but it is.
Wasn't the plan. Let's get to the rest of these Bengals internal free agents coming up next. Locked on Bengals today is brought to you by Quo. It's a new year. There are new systems, and this is a time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business, and we think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the simplest upgrades you can make, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, Quo, the smarter way to run your communications. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed with Quo. Everyone will see the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster, makes it easier to personalize those replies when you have multiple people working in that conversation. And it works right from your phone or computer, so you can keep your existing number if that's your desire. It's no surprise then that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's quo.com/lockedonnfl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers.
As the new year begins, well, you're trying to simplify your routine. I know I am. I'm trying to get into a routine after the season, and dinner is obviously a big one. Between work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, well, Home Chef is going to make life easier. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that taste great, and they're so easy to follow that I can follow them. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. There's over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering Locked On Bengals listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert. Again, homechef.com/lockedon.
A lot more guys to talk about here, James. Joe Flacco,
Just a few.
Trey Hendrickson, Joseph Osai. Those guys probably the top of the list. I think if you were trying to figure out the next one, like Lucas Patrick, Cordell Volson, Tyson Anderson, Jalen Davis, I think Jalen Davis maybe emerges out of that list as I say it out loud. And even there, that's a guy that was on the practice squad all year and then got an opportunity, and he's shown in that opportunity. He shined, but 30 years old. What stands out to you as you consider the rest of this list? And obviously, like Joe Flacco, the importance of having a backup quarterback is a whole conversation unto itself. What the Bengals ought to do with Trey Hendrickson, a big conversation as well. So those caveats aside, as you consider this list, what comes to mind?
Well, the Trey one is such a unique one because I think we all know.
Yeah.
Like,
but how do they?
Like, what do you like? What? Yeah. What do you think? You think Trey's back?
No.
Yeah, right. No. I think everybody kind of knows Trey, the Bengals. It just feels like it's time. Well, how in the world do you get better and add leadership and get sacks and playmaking and do all of the things that you need to do and let Trey just walk out the door? I mean, it's painful. Obviously, if 10 months ago, the Bengals had known 11 months ago at this point, this season was going to go the way it did and things were going to go the way they did, maybe they do just trade him. But there's a lesson there, and it's have a plan and be able to pivot. And when the trade talks were going awry initially because the market changed, maybe they should have just moved on. And if they weren't going to move on, then give him the contract that would have made him happy and be in, because then he'd be in that deal right now and we wouldn't be having this discussion. But yeah, how do they get better without Trey? And by the way, I'm not saying Joseph Osai is gone. I don't know that he's a 50% chance of being back, considering his agent, David Mulligetta, considering he's had back-to-back 5-sack seasons, considering the free agency pool. Will a team offer him 3 for $35 or 3 for $40 or something like that and convince themselves that he's going to have his best seasons during his next contract. Like I think that could certainly happen. And wouldn't shock me at all if we're talking about Trey Hendrickson in another uniform and Joseph Osai in another uniform.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. That's why we've already, I don't know about you, I've spent some of my preliminary time looking at external free agents, looking at edge rushers, and trying to find the guy. Because if the Bengals are going to make a splash, and this is, again, a topic for another show, if the Bengals are going to make a splash in free agency, the way Duke Tobin's talking, and given their recent history in free agency, I would think it would be at edge. Right? If they're going to sign a big external free agent to a contract, given what's available this year, given Duke's emphasis on we got to rush the passer, I'm for pass rush, blah, 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 and knowing what's not available on the interior defensive line, that's where my mind goes. Like, if they are going to make a splash, they would hypothetically spend the most money on an external free agent at edge, given the market there too, right? Like, edge is going to cost more than safety. It's going to cost more than linebacker. And they got their internal guys at corner. So I don't know where else they would go big splash. We'll see. Long way to go. Preliminary thoughts there. And assuming Joseph Osai is out, Trey Hendrickson's out. Cam Sample, also a free agent, played a good amount down the stretch. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back in camp on a minimum deal and kind of be like the 5th, 6th guy. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see them move on there. The other big one here, Joe Flacco. I think sounds like the Bengals are huge fans of Joe Flacco, listening to Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin. Does Flacco opt to return in a situation where he will not be an odds-on starter or even be competing to start if everything goes according to plan? Does he want to play football next year? Those are the questions for 41-year-old Joe Flacco, but a great deal of admiration from Bengals leadership for Joe Flacco, and really throughout the season, but especially listening to Duke talk about it in his postseason presser. I thought interesting.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here because I agree with you. Joe Flacco, it's one of those where it's like, all right, well, does he get a clear-cut opportunity to start? Because if it's like a backup role, I think, why wouldn't you stay in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Where you could throw to Jamar and T, and you have Joe Burrow's injury history, and you've had fun. And I do think he had fun and enjoyed the city and enjoyed the locker room. If you could just pick one, you roll the dice at edge and let Osai walk to retain Joe Flacco, or you secure Osai, but that means no Flacco. And this isn't a real thing. This is my made-up hypothetical. It's not a bridge the Bengals would actually have to cross. Which one would you value more?
I go Flacco because I want them to do something different at edge anyway. Like, if Osai and Murphy are your starting edge players, like, you can live with that, but it's not very exciting to me. Like, I don't know, maybe those guys go out there and prove me wrong. They're both still relatively young and different degrees of youth. But yeah, Flacco. I mean, looking at the backup market, because I'm looking at the list of quarterback free agents right now, it's pretty rough. For veteran backups. Outside of Flacco, who's proven that if you need a guy for a couple of games, he can be a guy for a couple of games for you. Like, you're talking about like Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, Brandon Allen, like Carson Wentz, because Malik Willis is going to get paid. That's the only free agent here that's going to get paid. Gardner Minshew got hurt. Like, it's a tough list.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew with the ACL. Like, you can't. Here's the problem with the Flacco thing. Minnesota, and this is where the Bengals may have the edge because they want to start McCarthy, but like, Minnesota is going to be looking for a quarterback. Miami might be looking for a quarterback. Indy with Daniel Jones.
There will be teams where he can compete to start for sure.
Yeah. Pittsburgh. Like, are we sure? Are we sure Aaron Rodgers is better than Joe Flacco?
And Aaron Rodgers might retire. Who knows?
But that's what I mean. Like, could they convince the, there are multiple. Maybe Lamar gets traded. Lamar gets traded, and Joe Flacco goes home and starts for the Ravens. Like, when he, with his mindset and his attitude and the ability, like, that fits in a lot of places, man. Just does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting to know that firsthand makes you understand the attractiveness of Joe Flacco, to have him on your roster playing quarterback in some capacity. You understand why he's so well liked. Some of the other free agents here as we wrap up the introduction to Bengals internal free agents. Much more to talk about here, obviously. Tanner Hudson, I think, is a guy the Bengals and Joe Burrow will want back in some capacity. Didn't play a whole lot for them this year. This is another league minimum type deal. He's 32 now, which is crazy. But
is he really?
Continues, yeah, going to be 32 according to Over the Cap for 2026.
Yeah,
but a
32 in November. 32 in November.
A guy they continue to like in very specific spots. I don't know if there's a ton of value to having him on the roster, depending on what happens outside of his role at tight end, but like as a direct backup to Mike Gesicki, that's certainly the thought there. I mentioned Lucas Patrick. I think that will be an interesting one because we'll see what the Bengals think about Matt Lee. Hard to think there's a ton of faith in the way that's gone. Seth McLaughlin no longer on the practice squad, didn't sign a futures deal with the Bengals either. He's off to Detroit. Noah Fant, don't think he'll be back, but is one of the Bengals free agents. Geno Stone, obviously, we don't think he's going to be back. Cordell Volson, wouldn't surprise me to see the Bengals have Cordell Volson back in camp in some capacity either.
Yeah, why not? He's played a lot of games, made a lot of starts. Maybe he works with Scott Peters and improves a little bit. Had that shoulder, good locker room guy. Maybe he's your first guard off the bench next year. Like that. That's not crazy.
I'm in favor of adding a swing tackle. I'll just get ahead of that now.
That's the one that sticks out. Like you talk about Lucas Patrick and Cordell, and it's like, where's the next Trent Brown? Not the current Trent Brown, the next Trent Brown. Who is that guy?
Trent Brown just start for the Titans last week?
For sure.
Yesterday.
And maybe it is just Trent Brown. Maybe that's who it is. But yeah.
I think that's about it for running down the list of guys. Marco Wilson is a name we haven't mentioned. Marco Wilson, haven't mentioned. I think Jalen Davis and Tyson Anderson are two guys the Bengals will want back as well in some capacity, at least for camp. I mean, Tyson Anderson, standout special teamer, right? So,
yeah. And the scary thing is with him, if you let him get to free agency, what if a team views him as a safety? Like that's another one where like, if you're the Bengals, I would have looked into it last year. You just kind of give him a little special teams extension and just never let him test it because he's valuable. But there's a certain value on being a primarily special teamer, and that's how they view him.
Yeah.
So if a team views him as a safety, they're going to get outbid in free agency.
Yeah. More to come on the Bengals internal free agents, specifically a larger conversation around Joe Flacco, a larger conversation around what direction they need to take with Trey Hendrickson. The obvious priorities, though, to wrap up the overall gist here, I think very clearly Lucas Patrick. I think the next big decision, Joe Flacco. And then after that, there's not a whole lot of a terrible degree.
Very clearly Dalton Risner.
What did I say?
Lucas Patrick.
I meant to say Dalton Risner. I'm looking.
I know you did. I was like, wait, what?
Good correction. Very clearly Dalton Risner. Down on the list somewhere, Lucas Patrick, if you like him for depth and you like what he brings there.
I shouldn't have corrected you and then taken the clip.
People would have been so confused.
They'd have been so mad. What's wrong with you, Dalton?
We'll wrap up there. More to come on the Bengals offseason, including the extension candidates, the things that we'd like to see the Bengals front office do to modernize and do differently and show us that they can change, even though Duke Tobin doesn't seem to think that many changes need to happen. Those are some shows that we'll have for you as the offseason rolls on here on Locked On Bengals. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.